studios. Dave Hughes here. And we're joined now by lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University, Jim Leggette. Am I saying your last name right? It's bothering me.
You nailed it, Dave. I'm not French. I'm not Italian. I'm North Carolina redneck.
Well, I never know for sure, so I wanted to double check. How you doing today?
Great, thanks. It's kind of funny you were talking say you were in kind of a dour mood. So therefore, you're going to bring a practitioner to dismal science on to cheer you up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was my thought. You know, if I'm in a bad mood, let's talk economics. That'll brighten the room, you know.
There you go.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
It has not been the year to dwell on economics, but unfortunately, that's your job. Now, let me ask you right off the top, just a 1,000-yard stare from up above. Give us an overview. Economically, where are we at right now?
I think that if it wasn't an election year, we would probably could have some consensus about what the numbers tell us. I think, we basically can, if you want some good news, you can find some good news. You want some bad news, you can find them. And then everybody basically, who was it had the song, Crosby, Stills, and Nash? Basically, everybody saying hooray for my side.
Yes.
I think we're seeing that. And here's what I've been trying to reconcile this one, because the numbers and the mood don't really match. And I think with the exception of inflation, all the numbers look good. But we feel stung by that inflation of 21 and 22, and we want somebody to blame. And putting on my dismal scientist hat is, I think whoever got the post-pandemic economy had a challenge they couldn't solve. But we want to blame, and maybe properly so, we blame the folks in charge. Wall Street Journal wrote about this a couple of days ago. Kind of interesting. We, meaning our government, made a decision. We're scared of unemployment and maybe even depression from the pandemic. So we're going to throw all kinds of money at it. And that worked. But we got inflation, which shouldn't surprise anybody, but it did. And I think you could argue that we underestimated the resiliency of the economy, and it bounced back far quicker than anybody thought. And now we're paying the price. But I think the good news is we've kind of righted that ship, but income hasn't fully caught up, and so we feel stung.
I think that's a great way to put it. Because part of the problem here is, and I talked about this last week, part of the problem is we had that extremely high inflation that was higher than it had been in decades. Now it's getting back to a more respectable level. We're at I can't remember the number, 2.5% right now, inflation. 2% is the Fed's goal. But the problem is when you have that level of inflation for a year and a half, once that is over, the prices don't drop back to where they were before the inflation. So as a result, when people go to the store, they're still seeing the higher inflationary prices. They're just not going up as quickly. And do you think there's maybe a disconnect for people in that area?
Yeah, and maybe it's maybe folks like myself hadn't done a good enough job of explaining this. Inflation is measured at, or is defined as, the rise in prices, and then it kind of reaches a plateau. And I think there is an unreasonable expectation in some circles. Prices ain't going down. In 1980 they didn't go down, and I know how to make prices go down, and it's called the Great Depression. And we're pretty sure we don't want to do that, So we're not, whatever you paid for, a hot dog, in 2019, you're not paying that again. I mean, that's just, and I think what happens here is, we can tolerate something being high. We can't tolerate continually ratcheting up. And as you were around, remember that is, no one ever felt like they could catch up in the late 80s, early 80s. And it was a painful price to break that inflation. So I guess here's what folks, when they write the history, and maybe I'll be off playing on a boat, not caring, is maybe the Fed has threaded the needle because, generally speaking, the price of getting rid of inflation is a slow economy. And we didn't like that. If you remember the rest of the story about the early 80s, we were in a pretty deep recession for quite a while. And it's not, and Republicans got whacked in the 82 election. And all the pundits said that was going to be the end of this Reagan thing. And then the economy came around and it was morning in America. But you paid that price. I guess I'm of the school of thought, and not everybody agrees here, is the cost of getting rid of inflation is so high, just don't do it. And it's like, and you throw money at it, and as we know, you throw money at a problem, eventually it catches up to you. Particularly if it's money you don't have.
Yeah, especially when it's money that ultimately the person you're throwing it at has to pay you for, because that's ultimately where it's all generated from. So it's kind of an infinite circle of stinkiness, basically. Now, one thing that you said
as a technical economic word.
Thank you. Stinkiness. Yes. You mentioned earlier, and I think this is another part of the conversation around this, is that prices have been going up. They're still going up, just not quite as quickly as they were going up this time last year, for example. But it doesn't seem like salaries, is increasing at the same rate, which makes it seem even worse. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, I think it's absolutely what's going on, because typically prices shoot up and wages catch up eventually. There's some evidence, at least for last year, wages did a pretty good job of catching up. Actually, I think now this is, as the lawyers say, subject to check, at or about level prices, but you're still behind. And there was an interesting article I read yesterday talking about that and looking at various commodities, and you're feeling stung, which means whoever happens to be sitting at the bridge has got a heck of a problem to explain, and you really can't, because and the way I kind of look at this stuff, the good or the bad news is presidents can only do so much to the economy, so they get to take credit for stuff, and they get blamed.
And at the same time, they spend most of their time trying to explain why, the stuff you don't really like, don't pay any attention to that. Look at this good thing I did. It's politics. It's been the same since politics was invented back in, Roman times. A chicken in every pot, a new car in every driveway, the whole 9 yards. But unfortunately, the bills...
Did you ever hear the Reagan line on that one? I think he got it from Will Rogers. He got all this. They say politics is the second oldest profession in the world. I think it resembles a lot like the first.
I think there's some truth in that. There was a lot of truth in a lot of things that Ronald Reagan said, but he had such a way with words, and he was so good. Yes, he was so good at it, and it was obviously a different era, because now we spend all of our time snapping and screaming. Yes, very much so.
In fact, to that end, did you see that movie where Dennis Quaid played Reagan?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I want to see that.
It's good, and it focused more on the Soviet Union, and they did it so well. Particularly poignant was when he released a letter about Alzheimer's, and they cut to scenes from his funeral. So you're the kind of guy who would like that, and I suspect many of our listeners would enjoy that movie.
And I don't know if this is in the movie, but my Reagan story, for lack of a better term, I was in radio, had not been in radio very long, but I was already in radio, and I was actually running the board, and we carried the president's address every week. When he did the thing and it accidentally went out live, and he said, "We've declared war on Russia. We begin bombing in 5 minutes." Just being funny. He was just joking around. Didn't realize the mic was live, and everybody had a freak out about it. I was sitting there, and when he said it, I almost spilled my drink.
They didn't get into that, but they did a lot of the kind of the brinksmanship with the Soviets until he and Gorbachev found a way to connect on a personal level with not all the aides around, and they figure out how to do business. Which is a lesson for us. How to get through all that and do business, talk to each other.
We've got Jim Leggette with us, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State University. Can you hang on through the break?
Absolutely.
We have talked about the current stinkiness. I want you to put on your Karnak the Magnificent hat and take a stab at the future. Yeah, if you got that reference, you can be friends with us. Otherwise, sit at another table during the lunch period. We will continue in the Element Wealth Studios on middays right after this. Element Wealth Studios, Dave Hughes. And with me, Jim Leggette from Mississippi State University, lecturer of economics. If you want to be fancy and get a weird look on his face, call him Leggette. Before the break, I told you, hopefully you were able to rummage around and find your Karnak hat, because let's take a look. 2 weeks from today, we have the election. Odds are fairly decent, I think slightly better than 50%, that either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is going to win the presidency. At this point, who knows?
Oh, you're going way out on a limb there.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you like a big firm limb under you when you start these conversations.
Yes.
Walk us through what do you think is going to happen economically for the country, and more specifically for Mississippi, depending on who wins. Let's start with Kamala Harris. What do you think will happen in the long run?
I think we'll probably have a continuation of what we have. Well, actually, I think we'll kind of have a continuation with both. I think the couple things going on. Nobody's seriously addressing the deficit, and actually, Trump's worse. Projected 10 trillion versus her 5. Both are bad on that. I think with the exception of trade policy, I think I'll call it his regulatory outlook is better. And I think they will do more classic Democrat stuff, which is generally not good for the economy. I think the economy tends to be resilient from administration to administration. And to me, there are two wild cards, though. There's always something out there that we don't know about that can mess it up. War, pandemic. But there may be a good thing. There are folks, and I'm not sure I fully agree with them yet, are chattering about AI and how it could be such a game changer. That may change everything. One of the things people are talking about, for some reason, productivity seems to be up, and no one can explain it. And maybe the economy will grow despite who's ever in charge. And then
that's a very positive outlook, Jim. I kind of like that.
Yeah, if the AI is remotely as good as, say, what the internet did, and some of the stuff we see already, it could, heck, even my Google searches are better. Because, you can get the ones that, I'll call it Google on steroids. And I don't think that we understand what it can do, and it could be that important. And maybe I am comfortable enough that the world's economy can withstand average presidents. And I hope so, but we have wild cards, and like I said, no one can seem to figure out why we're not having a recession. But the economy's growing, stock market's pretty high. I think we'll probably get divided government again. That's okay, because I think if one side has all the houses, they tend to overplay their hand. Because I think what we just do one of these what ifs that we all ponder about. If the Republicans had not lost the Senate, that would have restrained the Democrats, what I'll call their worst impulses. So whatever happens, I hope it's divided, because that's how the stock market likes divided government.
So basically what you're saying is divided government, and by that you mean the House, Senate, and White House, not all in the same party, performs like kind of a circuit breaker for the economy, is what you're saying.
I think, and if you look at the Clinton years, it was divided, and he happened to be there at the right time. He rode the internet bubble up. I think our friend Gerard made a whole bunch of money riding that wave, because he right place, right time. That counts. And And then if they want anything done, they had to figure out how to do it. That we were chatting about Reagan, his tax cuts. He had to get it through Tip O'Neill, and he had to bring the conservative at that time Southern Democratic senator was the Boll Weevil caucus and get them on board, and it seemed to work. So I guess if I'll paint a picture here, give us divided government, and maybe this AI thing will catch on. And others chat about I'll call it bioengineering for lack of a better word. The same technology that brought us the COVID vaccination. I think we don't even begin what that can do. I could envision a world some of these dread diseases could go away.
Well, let me just say, too, all of those advancements, AI, everything else, it depends on who you talk to. There's either a lot of scaremongering or a lot of bright, brilliant, golden paved streets hope for the future. The truth is always somewhere in the middle as far as how things turn out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going to be like, since you guys are talking about games, it's not going to be like the Terminator movies where Skynet takes over, and there'll be some things we don't like, but I think you have a fair assessment is it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think there's a gold rush going on there, and somebody's going to make a pot full of money, and somebody's going to lose their proverbial backside. Only problem is I don't know which ones.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking to us. He'd be off on his yacht by now. Jim Leggette, enjoyed talking to you, man. Keep up the good work up there in Starkville, will you?
And what was the word you used I liked?
Stinkiness.
Stinking, technical economic word. We should put it in Latin, then it really would mean something.